So what we want to do is create a new program. We'll just call it test. And when we hit create, we'll see that it puts the first line, which you always need to start with, telling what version of VPython we have there. And the very simplest program that you can write is to simply write sphere. And when you run this program, it creates a sphere. It's a white sphere. It's right in the center of the screen. You can rotate around. You can zoom out and zoom in as you'd like. Lots of different opportunities. You have the possibility, of course, to include more than one sphere. So if I decide I want to add a second sphere, when you add things, you have the possibility of changing their location. So if I wanted it in a different position, I can say POS for position equals, and I'm going to have to give it X, Y, and Z coordinates. We'll enter that as a vector, VEC, and let's say that I want to put it at 1, 1, 0. I'm also free to change the size. I can call it a radius of 0.4, say, and I can change the color. Color equals color dot red, for example. By default, the sphere is placed at 0, 0, 0 with a radius of 1 and a color of white. But if I run this program now, I can see that I have now two spheres on here. Now, if I want to change things after I've made them, I don't really have a possibility to do that right now because I have no way to refer back to them. And so what we can do is create variables that allow us to refer to them at a later date or later time. So for example, I could call this one Bob, and I could call this one Sue. And then I'm free to make changes like, say, Bob's color is color yellow, for example. And if I run the program, boom, now I have a yellow sphere where the white one used to be. I can also decide at this point that maybe Sue should be a little bit smaller. So I have Sue.radius equals 0.1. And I can run that program and see what that looks like. Now sometimes programs won't do what you want them to do. And so you want a way of changing the code very quickly. For example, if there was a problem and I just didn't want to be able to see Bob in yellow, what I can do is I can put in a hashtag or a pound sign, and that makes the code turn gray, and this is what's called a comment. So it will ignore everything on this line, and if I now run the program, it's back to being white because I've edited out, I've commented out the part that made it turn yellow. Comments are also very useful for explaining what's going to happen in your code. Now we will change what Bob and Sue look like. That doesn't actually change anything here in the code, but yet, I can rotate it around and it looks all the same, but yet somebody who's reading your code can tell what it is that's supposed to be happening there, and if you read your code at a later time, you can remind yourself what's supposed to be happening there. One more thing you can do, there are these built-in attributes, the position, the radius, the color, but you are free to add whatever other attributes you might like. So for example, I could tell that it has a mass of 1. Now that changes absolutely nothing in running the program. The program looks exactly the same, but you can use that variable later on if this object needed to have some mass and it was, say, gravitationally attracted, or you wanted to find the force on it or something. It's an easy way to incorporate that variable along with, say, the name Sue. I can, just like I did here, change the attributes like this. I can say bob.mass equals 0.5. And again, no change whatsoever in the visualization of the program, but at some later point when I need to make a calculation and I need to know the masses of the objects, this is an easy way to see what those things are going to be, or to be able to access what those things are going to be. In addition to spheres, you can make boxes, you can make arrows, you can make all sorts of different shapes, spirals and such. And if you ever want to get a good look at how to do all those things, clicking the Help button and choosing a different 3D object like an arrow or a box or a cone or a curve and so on and so forth will tell you all the details on how you would create, say, an arrow to represent the force or whatever it is that you want to do. And so the Help button can be a very useful tool when you're doing Glowscript coding.